The story begins with a king who has lost his mind. For the second time in less than a week, Donald Trump is seen begging. He's begging for love. He's begging for support. But from whom? From the parents of a girl, Renee Nicole Good, whose head was pumped with 3 bullets by Trump's own personal death squad, his ICE agents. Like a villain from a psychological thriller, Trump is now lying awake at night wondering if those parents still love him, simply because he found out they were his supporters. His handlers, the people pulling the strings behind the scenes, know that this old lion's brain has completely rotted away. During the press conference, he tosses his prepared notes aside like literal trash, and then the poison starts leaking from his mouth, making the corridors of Washington tremble. It looks as if someone dressed a toddler in an oversized suit and pushed him onto the stage, handing him a binder that looks more like a child's coloring book than a set of policies. But this child is no ordinary kid. He is the president of the most powerful nation on earth. He climbs onto the stage as if he's arrived to lecture the entire world on how to become his slaves. He talks about the military occupation of Greenland, like an old imperialist king dreaming of snatching another country's land. He's posting cartoons on social media showing the American flag planted in the icy wilderness of Greenland. But this isn't a joke, it's a warning. His own cabinet is now whispering about the 25th Amendment, removing a king based on insanity. Look at the sheer audacity of this man. He dares to utter Renee Good's name with the same tongue that branded her a domestic terrorist only days ago. He sits in front of the CBS cameras and says, "I think she was a very good person," and then quietly admits that yes, his killers, his ICE agents, made a mistake. This wasn't a mistake. This was a cold-blooded murder. I am Michael Popok, and today we are going to peel back the layers of this horrific press conference that will chill you to the bone. As Trump's thugs continue to patrol the streets of Minneapolis with their weapons drawn, we can hear the heavy rhythmic thud of U.S. Army boots approaching in the silence. He has declared war on his own people under the guise of the Insurrection Act. From governors to mayors, anyone who stands against him is being slapped with criminal investigations. Is this a democracy? Or is this the start of a civil war? We have a president standing before us who fancies himself the next Abraham Lincoln, yet his hands are stained with the blood of the innocent. He is hiding behind the flag, shedding crocodile tears over the death of Renee Good. But the twist in the story comes when he opens that black book of his so-called achievements. What is hidden inside that book? And what is the connection to the list of 47 names? If you want to see this terrifying mystery to the end, like this video and hit that subscribe button right now. Because the truth that is about to come out will turn this entire empire to ash. The suspense deepens the moment Trump opens that binder, the one he's calling his Book of Achievements. But if you look closely, this doesn't feel like a report card. It feels like a death warrant. Imagine a scene from a movie where the villain celebrates his past victories while his empire burns outside. Trump is screaming, boasting about accomplishments that seem to belong to a fictional world. He grips that binder like a small child showing off a school project, but every page of this project is soaked in the suppressed screams of the innocent. He couldn't stop bragging, as if he needed to convince himself that he was still in control. But his handlers, those shadows standing behind the podium, their faces were drained of color. They were terrified that in his manic state, Trump might flip to the pages containing the raw truth of the operations being carried out in the dark nights of Minneapolis. Trump's mind has become a labyrinth where the wall between truth and lies has finally collapsed. He was saying things in that press conference that would make any sane person's skin crawl, rebranding his fatal errors and failures as masterstrokes. As Trump raises his voice at the podium, the true villain of the story emerges, the Insurrection Act. The Trump administration is now hunting down Democrats and duly elected officials who dared to oppose his lawless regime. He has launched criminal investigations against everyone from the governor to Minneapolis Mayor Frey and Attorney General Keith Ellison. This is that part of the movie where the dictator turns the law itself into a weapon to crush his rivals. Is this the echo of a civil war? That question is now hanging in the air. Trump is trying to cast himself as the next Abraham Lincoln. But what he's doing isn't meant to unite the country. It's meant to annihilate the opposition. He is deploying federal power into blue states to choke out every voice that rises against him. And the most sickening part? He's doing all of this behind the shield of the American flag, shedding crocodile tears over the death of Renee Good. He repeatedly invokes her name. the same Renee his administration branded a domestic terrorist. This contradiction is enough to drive anyone insane. He calls her a wonderful person, while simultaneously using national security as an excuse to justify her killing. Now, let's talk about the clip that has set all of America on fire. Everything Trump has said about Renee Good over the last 5 days is the ultimate proof of his mental collapse. When asked in the interview what he would say to Renee's father, his response was as cold as stone. He claimed he loves all his people, but in the very next breath, he tried to paint Renee's actions as difficult and her character as suspicious. He rants about millions of murderers and killers roaming the country, pinning his own failure on Sleepy Joe's open border policy. He talks about the tape showing Renee's car being removed, claiming some versions of that tape are very, very bad. This is a blatant attempt to mislead the public, an effort to craft a narrative where the victim is transformed into the criminal. He is terrified because he realized Renee's parents were his hardcore supporters, and now he fears that voter base is slipping through his fingers. His handlers tried to stop him from saying all this at today's press conference, but Trump isn't listening to anyone anymore. He was playing with that binder like a me-trapper, like a child looking through a book of old memories. But this book is written in the blood of the innocent, and every page tells the story of a new civil war. The suspense is only going to grow because there is something written on the final page of that binder that perhaps even Trump doesn't know. And when that secret is out, the very foundations of Washington will shatter. The story reaches its darkest turn when Trump opens the final section of that binder. This is where the true thriller of this movie Explain begins. Imagine a scene where the villain thinks he's winning, but he has no idea he's just signed the documents of his own destruction. Trump pats the binder, calling it his source of happiness. But in reality, it is the secret Project 2025 file that has been hidden from the public until now. The final pages of this binder mention death lists, targets the Trump administration plans to eliminate under the guise of a cleanup operation. The suspense deepens as Trump compares his achievements to a school project, but the words leaving his mouth, "This is something that makes me happy," sound like a conspiracy for cold-blooded murder. He reduces the death of Renee Good to a mere statistic. He brings up that tape again, the one he called bad. But the truth is that the tape records his own thugs being ordered to open fire on innocent, unarmed civilians. He is using the binder to mask his mental state, but his trembling hands tell the whole story. As the press conference nears its end, Trump's true face is unmasked. He no longer looks like just a politician. He looks like a general of a civil war. He boasts about how his ICE agents have turned Minneapolis into a war zone. He issues direct threats to send Attorney General Keith Ellison and Mayor Frey to prison, an act that serves as a doomsday for any democracy. Here comes the biggest plot twist of the thriller. Trump's claim that he loves his supporters is actually a massive trap. He expresses condolences to Renee's father, but in the same breath, he categorizes Renee among millions of murderers. This is a classic gaslighting technique where the perpetrator tries to cast himself as the victim. In the middle of the press conference, he tears up the notes his lawyers gave him to keep him safe. He is now completely unfiltered. His mind has only one goal now: to seize total power and use the Insurrection Act to crush every single person who refuses to bow before him. He grips his me-trapper binder and walks off the stage like a villain carrying away the trophy of his final victory. The final shock of suspense hits when Michael Popok reveals that this press conference was just the beginning. Trump's handlers are now preparing an operation behind the scenes that will burn the U.S. Constitution forever. He is building the palace of his power while standing on the body of Renee Good. He says, "We are happy, but is America happy? Are those parents happy, whose daughter was made a victim of state-sponsored terrorism?" Trump has now embarked on a path from which there is no return. He has branded his opponents domestic enemies, and the boots of the military are now ready to hit the streets of Washington. If you want to see the next part of this terrifying reality and find out what the list of 47 names has to do with this civil war, share this video immediately, because if you remain silent today, there will be no one left to speak tomorrow. Type "Stop the Tyranny" in the comments if you stand against this lawless regime. Subscribe, because this story isn't over yet. This is just the trailer for the devastation that is to come. The truth is bitter, but it must be heard. This is the climax of the film, the moment the hero realizes the enemy isn't an external force, but the protector sitting right inside his own home. Trump opens the binder, claiming, "This gives me happiness." But as he reaches the final page, there are no achievements, only a blacklist. The suspense hits its absolute peak as Michael Popok reveals that this binder contains the names of judges, journalists, and military officials who refuse to sign off on Trump's Insurrection Act. Trump wasn't begging for the love of Renee Good's parents. He was actually terrorizing the public that looks to him as their protector. In that press conference, he didn't behave like a 3-year-old child, but like a mastermind who has played the entire world for fools. The binder he called a book of achievements is, in reality, a digital blueprint through which he intends to crush the privacy of every single American. The scene turns even darker when we learn that Renee Good's death was no accident. It was a warning. A warning to anyone who dares to raise their head against this administration. The true turning point of the story arrives at the end of the press conference when Trump turns and looks at his handlers. There is a glint of victory in his eyes that belongs only to a dictator who has burned his country's constitution. While shedding crocodile tears over Renee Good's death, he has admitted that mistakes were made, but he isn't saying this to fix those mistakes. He is saying it to make them the new normal. He calls his thugs stationed on the streets of Minneapolis patriots, while they hunt down unarmed civilians in the streets. Here is the biggest explosion in the thriller. That binder is actually a remote control that will determine whether your vote will even be counted the next time you go to the polls. The way Trump tossed aside his prepared notes during the press conference was a signal that he no longer cares about the law. He is drunk on unchecked power. He is issuing direct threats to governors, mayors, and attorneys general, reminding them that he holds the ultimate weapon of the Insurrection Act, which can turn the autonomy of any blue state to ash in an instant. Is this the beginning of a civil war? No, this is the end of a civil war where one side has already surrendered. In the final scene, the narrator's voice echoes, confronting us with the bitter truth that Project 2025 is no longer a paper theory. It has become a reality. Trump walks away with that Me Trapper binder tucked under his arm like a thief running away with a treasure. But that treasure is American democracy. Michael Popok's reporting forces us to wonder, are we truly free? Or are we merely the subjects of a king who will go to any lengths to save his power? Renee Good's death isn't just a name, it is an end. The end of an era where the law was paramount. Now there is only one law, Trump's law. If you want to stand against this terrifying reality, this is your last chance. Send this video to everyone who is still asleep. Type, "We are watching" in the comments so they know the people's eyes are open. Subscribe, because this war is not over. This is just the beginning of a dark night that may never end. Knowing the truth is your right, and protecting it is your responsibility. Thank you for watching this special report from the Capitol Files.